Thomas Grant woke to the shrill ring of his phone cutting through the darkness. The digital clock on his nightstand read 2:17 a.m. Only emergency calls came at this hour. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the device. "Mr. Parker, this is Memorial Hospital. Your daughter Sophie has been admitted in serious condition." The words hit William Parker like a physical blow. His heart hammered against his ribs as he fumbled for clothes in the darkness of his bedroom, his mind racing with terrible possibilities. 20 minutes later, he was running through sterile hospital corridors, his Italian leather shoes squeaking against the polished floor. Dr. Phillips, a grave-faced man in his 50s, intercepted William before he could reach the emergency ward. "Mr. Parker, I need to prepare you. Sophie's injuries are extensive." William pushed past him, bursting through the doors. His 7-year-old daughter lay motionless on white sheets, her golden hair spread across the pillow like a halo. Her small face was barely recognizable beneath the bruises. An IV line ran into her tiny arm, the clear liquid dripping steadily into her vein. "Sophie," William whispered, dropping to his knees beside the bed. "Sweetheart, it's Daddy." Her eyelids fluttered. When she saw him, tears filled her eyes. She tried to speak but winced with pain. William leaned closer. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice so faint he could barely hear it. "Please don't let me go back with Rebecca. I'm so scared." The world around William seemed to freeze. Before he could respond, Dr. Phillips pulled him aside, his expression grim. "Mr. Parker, I need to speak with you outside." In the hallway, the doctor kept his voice low. "Your daughter has 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and extensive bruising in various stages of healing. This indicates ongoing abuse, not a single incident." "That's impossible," William said, his voice hollow. "Rebecca said Sophie fell down the stairs yesterday while I was on a business trip." The doctor's eyes hardened. "I've been treating child abuse cases for 20 years. These injuries are not consistent with a fall. We've already contacted Child Protective Services." William stared blankly at the wall. Images flashed through his mind. Rebecca's sweet smile when she first offered to help after Elizabeth died. Sophie's increasing withdrawal over the past months. His own absence as he buried himself in work to escape the pain of losing his wife. "What about my son?" William suddenly remembered. "Ethan, he's 8 months old. The baby was brought in with your daughter. He has some concerning bruising as well. We're keeping him for observation." William felt his legs weaken beneath him. He steadied himself against the wall, ice spreading through his veins. "I need to see my son." Later, sitting between his children's hospital beds, William's mind wandered back to the beginning. Elizabeth had been the light of his life, her laughter filling their home with joy. When complications arose during Ethan's birth, the doctors had tried everything. William still remembered her final words, "Take care of our babies." Then she was gone, leaving him with a newborn son and a 5-year-old daughter. The grief had consumed him. As CEO of Parker Technologies, he had thrown himself into work, staying late at the office, taking international trips, anything to escape the empty house that no longer felt like home. Sophie had stopped running to greet him with hugs. Ethan grew from a newborn to a crawling baby, while William remained a stranger to his own son. Then Rebecca Morgan had appeared like an angel sent from heaven, Elizabeth's close friend from college. She had stepped in to help with a gentle smile and capable hands, taking care of everything that was broken, including William. "You can't do this alone," she had told him. "Elizabeth would want me to help." William had been pathetically grateful, relieved to leave the childcare to someone who seemed to know what she was doing. If Elizabeth had been light, Rebecca was his rescue. She held both children as if they were her own, caring for them with what seemed like perfect devotion. At least that's what he had believed. The door to the hospital room opened, pulling William from his thoughts. A small woman with an official-looking badge stepped inside. "Mr. Parker, I'm Sarah Chen from Child Protective Services. We need to discuss your children's situation." William straightened. "Of course. Can you explain how your daughter received these injuries?" "I was in Chicago on business. Rebecca called to tell me Sophie had fallen down the stairs. She said she brought her to the hospital immediately." Sarah's expression remained neutral. "According to the medical report, many of these injuries occurred over several weeks. Were you aware of any previous incidents?" "No, William stopped shame-washing over him. How many nights had he called home just to say goodnight, not even noticing if Sophie seemed different? How many weekends had he spent at the office while Rebecca took the children to the park? Sarah pulled out a tablet. Mr. Parker, I need to be direct. Your prolonged absences while your children were in Miss Morgan's care could be interpreted as neglect. The court takes a dim view of parents who fail to protect their children from abuse. William felt his chest tighten. Are you saying I could lose custody of my children? It's a possibility we have to consider. The priority is ensuring Sophie and Ethan are safe. She paused, studying him. Where is Miss Morgan now? I called her from the car. She's on her way. As if summoned by his words, Rebecca Morgan appeared in the doorway. At 35, she was strikingly beautiful with dark hair and wide blue eyes that now filled with tears as she rushed to Sophie's bedside. Oh my God, Sophie, my poor baby. She stroked Sophie's hair with trembling fingers. William noticed how Sophie went completely still at her touch. Rebecca turned to him, her face a mask of concern. William, I'm so sorry. I only left her alone for 2 minutes to check on Ethan. When I heard the crash, her voice broke. I should have watched her more carefully. William watched her performance with growing unease. Had Rebecca always been this theatrical? Or was he only noticing now because he was looking for it? Sarah Chen cleared her throat. Ms. Morgan, I'm from Child Protective Services. I'd like to speak with you privately about the incident. Rebecca's eyes widened. Of course, anything to help poor Sophie. She squeezed William's arm. We'll get through this together. As they left the room, William noticed Sophie watching Rebecca with an expression he had never seen before on his daughter's face. Pure fear. A nurse entered to check Sophie's vital signs. Your daughter is stable, Mr. Parker. Try to get some rest. There's a waiting room down the hall with coffee. William nodded but didn't move. Rest was impossible. His entire world had just been turned upside down. If what the doctor said was true, if Rebecca had been hurting his children while he was away, then he had failed in the most fundamental duty of a parent. He had failed to protect them. The worst part was, he couldn't even deny the accusation of neglect. How many bedtime stories had he missed? How many of Sophie's questions had he answered with distracted uh-huhs while checking his email? He had outsourced his responsibility to Rebecca, grateful for the freedom to bury himself in work rather than face his grief. Now his children were paying the price. William stepped into the hallway just as Rebecca and Sarah Chen finished their conversation. Rebecca's face was tear-streaked, but she managed a brave smile when she saw him. The social worker just has a few more questions for you, she said, squeezing his arm again. I'll stay with the children. Something in her tone made William hesitate. Actually, why don't you get some coffee? I'll be back soon. In a private consultation room, Sarah Chen got straight to the point. Mr. Parker, Miss Morgan's account of a simple fall doesn't match the medical evidence. I'm concerned about allowing your children to return home with her present. William ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair. What options do I have? You could request temporary sole custody while we investigate, but that would mean taking an immediate leave of absence from work to care for them full-time. She paused. Can you do that? The question hung in the air. 6 months ago, the answer would have been an immediate no. Parker Technologies was in the middle of a major expansion. There were contracts to sign investors to meet decisions that only the CEO could make. But sitting in that sterile hospital room, all William could see was Sophie's bruised face and the terror in her eyes when Rebecca touched her. Yes, he said firmly, whatever it takes. Sarah studied him. There will be a hearing in 72 hours to determine temporary custody arrangements. In the meantime, I recommend you start gathering evidence of your fitness as a parent. William left the consultation room with a heavy heart and a growing sense of determination. As he approached his children's room, he saw Martha Reynolds, his longtime housekeeper, sitting beside Sophie's bed. The elderly woman had worked for the Parker family since before Sophie was born. She had been Elizabeth's confidant and Sophie's surrogate grandmother. Martha looked up, her weathered face lined with concern. Mr. Parker, I came as soon as I heard. Thank you for being here, Martha. William glanced around. Where's Rebecca? She said she needed to go home and pack overnight bags for you and the children. Martha's voice was carefully neutral, but something in her expression made William pause. Martha, I need to ask you something important. Have you noticed anything strange about Rebecca's behavior with the children when I'm not home? The housekeeper's hands twisted in her lap. She glanced at Sophie, who had finally fallen asleep under the influence of pain medication. Mr. Parker, I've wanted to speak to you for some time, but... She trailed off, looking conflicted. Please, Martha, I need to know the truth. Martha took a deep breath. Rebecca changes when you are not around. She's different, strict with the children in a way that goes beyond normal discipline. She locks them in their rooms for hours. Sophie has had many accidents that I never witnessed. Why didn't you tell me? William demanded, anger flaring. She threatened me, Martha admitted, her voice barely audible. Said she would tell you I was stealing if I said anything against her, that I'd lose my vow and my reputation. Who would believe an old housekeeper over a charming young woman like her? William felt sick. What else have you noticed? She's obsessed with your finances. I've seen her going through your office when you're away, and the way she speaks to Sophie when you're not listening? Martha shuddered. It frightens me. William was about to respond when Sophie stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, focusing on William with effort. Daddy? Her voice was thin with pain. I'm here, sweetheart. He took her small hand gently. Sophie's eyes darted to the door, then back to her father. Is Rebecca gone? Yes, for now. Sophie seemed to relax slightly. She hurts Ethan too. When he cries, she squeezes his arms until he stops. William felt rage building inside him, hot and dangerous. Sophie, why didn't you tell me? Tears filled her eyes. She said you wouldn't believe me, that you loved her more than us, that you'd send me away if I was bad. Each word was like a knife in William's heart. What kind of father was he that his own daughter believed such lies, that she had suffered in silence rather than come to him? Listen to me, he said, his voice breaking with emotion. I love you and Ethan more than anything in this world. I believe you and I promise Rebecca will never hurt either of you again. 2 days later, Sophie and Ethan were released from the hospital. Against the advice of Sarah Chen, William took them back to their home rather than a hotel. He wanted the children in familiar surroundings, and he needed access to his home office to gather evidence. Rebecca had moved into a guest room at his request, maintaining the charade that this was just a precaution until things were sorted out. William installed a temporary bed in Sophie's room so he could sleep beside his daughter. Ethan's crib was moved in as well. William was taking no chances with his children's safety. That night, after Sophie and Ethan were finally asleep, William crept downstairs to his office. He needed to call his attorney, Michael Hayes. The 72-hour deadline was looming, and he needed legal advice urgently. Michael answered on the second ring despite the late hour. William, I've been waiting for your call. I need your help, Michael. My children are in danger, and I could lose custody of them. Slow down. Tell me everything. William explained the situation while downloading hospital records to send to his friend. As he spoke, he heard a floorboard creak in the hallway outside his office. William lowered his voice. Rebecca has been abusing my children. I need to get her out of our lives permanently without losing custody. Michael was silent for a moment. This won't be easy, William. Family courts favor the status quo. If you've been an absent father while Rebecca has been the primary caregiver, the judge might view her as more essential to the children's stability. But she's abusing them, which we need to prove. Testimony from a 7-year-old can be challenged. We need hard evidence. How do I get that? She's too smart to leave a paper trail. Start recording everything. Set up cameras if you can do it discreetly. Document any suspicious behavior. Michael paused. And William, yes. Be careful. If she's as manipulative as you say, she'll fight back when cornered. After hanging up, William sat in the darkness of his office contemplating his next move. A slight sound at the door made him look up. Rebecca stood in the doorway, a concerned expression on her face. She wore a silk robe tied at the waist, her dark hair falling loose around her shoulders. William, are you coming to bed? Her voice was soft, concerned. I have some work to finish. His tone was deliberately neutral. You should get some sleep. Rebecca stepped into the office, moving with the fluid grace that had once captivated him. You've been so distant since the accident. I know you blame me for what happened to Sophie. William had to fight to keep his expression impassive. No. I don't blame anyone. I'm just worried about my daughter. Rebecca sighed, perching on the edge of his desk. We're all worried, but the doctor said she'll make a full recovery. She placed her hand on his arm. We'll get through this together, just like we got through losing Elizabeth. The comparison of Sophie's abuse to Elizabeth's death made William's blood boil, but he forced himself to remain calm. Rebecca was testing him, looking for signs that he suspected her. He couldn't tip his hand yet. I just need some time, he said, removing her hand gently but firmly. Rebecca's eyes narrowed slightly before her face smoothed into an understanding smile. Of course, take all the time you need. She leaned down to kiss his cheek. I love you, William. I love our family. Our family. The words rang false in his ears. As she left, William noticed something odd. Rebecca didn't go back upstairs to the guest room. Instead, she turned toward the kitchen. Curious, William waited a few minutes before following. The kitchen was empty, but the door to the basement was slightly ajar. Silent as a shadow, William crept down the stairs. A light shone from his wine cellar converted years ago into a home office for Elizabeth. Rebecca sat at the old desk, William's laptop open before her. She was scrolling through files, occasionally stopping to take pictures with her phone. William remained hidden in the shadows, watching as she accessed his private financial records, property holdings, and most disturbingly, his will. After 15 minutes, Rebecca closed the laptop and stood. William retreated quickly up the stairs, making it back to his office before she emerged from the basement. His heart pounded against his ribs. What had he just witnessed? The next morning, William woke early, his body stiff from sleeping in the chair beside Sophie's bed. His daughter was still asleep, her bruised face peaceful in repose. Ethan gurgled softly in his crib, batting at a hanging mobile. William picked up his son, marveling at how much he had grown in the months William had been distracted by work. Ethan had Elizabeth's eyes, deep blue and inquisitive. He reached up to touch his father's face with chubby fingers. I'm so sorry, little man, William whispered. I haven't been the father you deserve. Downstairs, Rebecca was already in the kitchen preparing breakfast. The scene was so domestic, so normal. It was surreal given what William now knew. Good morning, she said brightly. I made pancakes, Sophie's favorite. I thought it might cheer her up. That's thoughtful. William settled Ethan into his high chair. I'm going to stay home today. Actually, I've decided to take a leave of absence from work. The children need me right now. Rebecca froze momentarily before recovering. That's wonderful, William. The children will be so happy to have you around more, and it gives me a chance to go back to my volunteer work at the hospital. The hospital where she claimed to spend 3 days a week helping cancer patients. Another lie, William wondered. He made a mental note to check. I thought I'd take Sophie to the park today if she feels up to it, he said casually. Some fresh air might do her good. Oh, I don't think that's wise. Rebecca's tone remained pleasant, but her eyes hardened slightly. The doctor said she needs rest. And what about your meeting with the Singapore investors? You've been planning that for months. David can handle it. William sipped his coffee. The children are my priority now. Rebecca studied him over the rim of her coffee cup. This is quite a change, William. Just last week, you said the Singapore deal was make or break for the company's Asian expansion. Near-death experiences have a way of shifting perspectives. He met her gaze steadily. Something dangerous flickered in Rebecca's eyes before she smiled. Of course, family first. That's what Elizabeth would want. The mention of his late wife in Rebecca's mouth made William's skin crawl, but he forced himself to smile back. The game had begun. Rebecca was suspicious, and he needed to be careful. While Rebecca was in the shower, William slipped out to meet the private security specialist Michael had recommended. The man installed hidden cameras throughout the common areas of the house and provided William with a small recording device to carry with him. Remember, the specialist warned, in most states you need two-party consent for audio recording, but video without audio in your own home is generally permissible. William nodded. I understand the legal risks, but my children's safety comes first. Back home, William spent the morning with Sophie, reading her favorite stories and helping her draw. The child was quieter than before her accident, but seemed to relax slightly with Rebecca out of the room. Daddy, Sophie said hesitantly as they colored, is Rebecca going to live with us forever? William set down his crayon. Would that bother you, sweetheart? Sophie looked down at her, drawing a picture of their family at the beach. William noticed she had drawn only 3 figures himself, Sophie and baby Ethan. Rebecca was conspicuously absent. She's not like Mommy, Sophie whispered. Mommy never hurt us. William felt his throat tighten. No, sweetheart, Mommy loved you very much. Rebecca pretends to love us, but she's different when you're not here. She gets angry and says mean things. Sophie's voice dropped even lower. She told me it's my fault Mommy died. William had to fight to control the rage that surged through him. That is absolutely not true, Sophie. What happened to Mommy was no one's fault, especially not yours. Then why did Rebecca say it? because Rebecca is not a good person, and she won't be living with us much longer. Sophie looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. Promise. I promise, Bo. William pulled his daughter into a gentle hug, mindful of her injuries. I'm going to fix this, Sophie. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you before. That afternoon, while Rebecca took Ethan for a checkup at the pediatrician, William used the opportunity to search her belongings. In her dresser beneath layers of carefully folded lingerie, he found a burner phone. The call log showed frequent communications with a number William didn't recognize. He was about to replace the phone when it vibrated in his hand. A text message appeared on the screen. Time running out. Parker still suspicious. We need to accelerate plans. William felt a chill run down his spine. Rebecca wasn't working alone. He quickly photographed the message and returned the phone to its hiding place. Next, he checked Rebecca's laptop, but it was password protected. In her closet, he found a locked metal box tucked behind her shoes. William noted its location but didn't attempt to open it. He couldn't risk Rebecca knowing he had been searching her things. As he turned to leave her room, something caught his eye. On Rebecca's nightstand sat a silver pocket watch with a delicate face. William recognized it immediately. It had belonged to Elizabeth, a family heirloom passed down from her grandmother. William distinctly remembered placing it in Elizabeth's jewelry box after her funeral. How had Rebecca gotten it? He picked up the watch, turning it over in his hand. The inscription on the back read, "To Elizabeth, my North Star. Love always, William." Hearing the front door open, William quickly replaced the watch and left the room, his mind racing. Rebecca had been systematically inserting herself into every aspect of his life, replacing Elizabeth piece by piece. But why? What was her endgame? The answer came to him with sickening clarity as he recalled the text message. We need to accelerate plans. This wasn't just about abusing his children or even stealing from him. Something far more sinister was at work. As Rebecca entered with Ethan, William forced a smile. How was the checkup? Perfect. Rebecca beamed, bouncing Ethan on her hip. The doctor says he's completely recovered from his little fall. William reached for his son. Let me take him. You've been on your feet all morning. Rebecca hesitated fractionally before handing over the baby. William immediately checked Ethan's arms, noting fresh red marks just above his elbow. Rage surged through him, but he kept his expression neutral. I was thinking, Rebecca said, watching him closely, maybe we should take a family vacation once Sophie is better. Get away from all this stress. That's an interesting idea. William bounced Ethan gently, earning a giggle from the baby. Where would you suggest? The lake house, perhaps. It's so peaceful there. Just the four of us, no distractions. The lake house, isolated on 20 acres of private woodland, miles from the nearest neighbor, a perfect place for accidents to happen. I'll think about it, William said, turning away to hide the disgust in his eyes. Right now, I need to focus on the custody hearing. Custody hearing, Rebecca's voice sharpened. What custody hearing? William turned back, affecting surprise. Didn't I mention it? Child Protective Services has scheduled a preliminary hearing. Standard procedure in cases of suspected child abuse. Rebecca's face paled. But that's ridiculous. It was an accident. Of course it was. William kept his tone neutral. But they have to investigate any suspicious injuries. You understand? Rebecca's eyes narrowed. What exactly are you saying, William? I'm not saying anything. I'm just following protocol to ensure the children's safety. The children are perfectly safe with me. Rebecca's voice had an edge now. I've sacrificed everything for them, for this family. And we appreciate it. William met her gaze steadily. The hearing is just a formality. Rebecca stared at him for a long moment. When is this hearing? Tomorrow morning. So soon. Her voice rose slightly. Shouldn't we have a lawyer present? Actually, Michael Hayes is already handling it. He's the best family attorney in the city. Something dark flashed in Rebecca's eyes. I see. And when were you planning to tell me all this? I'm telling you now. William shifted Ethan to his other arm. Will that be a problem? Rebecca's face smoothed into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Of course not. I have nothing to hide. That night, after putting the children to bed, William called Michael from the privacy of his car in the garage. I found something, Michael. Rebecca isn't working alone. There's someone else involved, someone she's been communicating with about plans for me. This changes things, Michael said gravely. Have you considered she might be after more than just your money, William? If the abuse is deliberate, calculated. I know what you're suggesting. William ran a hand over his face. That Elizabeth's death might not have been from natural causes. It's worth investigating. And in the meantime, you need to get those kids away from her. The hearing isn't until tomorrow morning. Then don't let them out of your sight until then. William ended the call and sat in the darkness of his car, contemplating his next move. The thought that Rebecca might have had something to do with Elizabeth's death was almost too horrific to contemplate. Yet it would explain so much about her behavior, her calculated insinuation into his life and the lives of his children. As he stepped out of his car, William noticed a movement at the window of his home office. Rebecca stood there watching him, her figure illuminated by the soft glow of a desk lamp. She didn't move or try to hide when their eyes met. Instead, she smiled slowly, deliberately before drawing the curtains closed. A chill ran down William's spine. Rebecca knew he was on to her. The pretense was over. William hurried into the house and up to Sophie's room where he had left the children sleeping. His heart nearly stopped when he found Sophie's bed empty. In a panic, he checked Ethan's crib. The baby was gone too. Looking for something, Rebecca's voice came from the doorway. She stood there holding Ethan with Sophie clutching her robe, looking terrified. "What are you doing with my children?" William's voice was deadly calm, despite the fear gripping his heart. "Our children," Rebecca corrected. "I was just taking them to the kitchen for a late-night snack." Poor Sophie had a nightmare. "Didn't you, sweetie?" Sophie said nothing, her eyes wide with fear as she looked between the adults. "Sophie, come here," William said, gently extending his hand. The little girl hesitated, glancing up at Rebecca. "Go on," Rebecca said, her voice sweet but her eyes hard. "Go to Daddy." Sophie ran to William, who lifted her into his arms despite her size. She clung to him, trembling. "And my son," William held out his other arm. Rebecca's smile tightened as she clutched Ethan closer. "He's comfortable where he is. Aren't you, little one?" William took a step forward. "Rebecca, give me my son." "You know, William, I've been thinking about our conversation earlier." Rebecca bounced Ethan lightly, ignoring his request. "About the custody hearing. What about it? It seems rather unnecessary, a family matter like this. Surely we can resolve it between ourselves." "Child Protective Services thinks otherwise." Rebecca's expression hardened. "They're overreacting to an unfortunate accident just like you are." "An accident?" William's voice was flat, like the bruises on Ethan's arms, like the broken ribs and fractured wrist, like the months of terror my children have lived with while I was too blind to see it. Rebecca's mask of sweetness fell away. "You have no idea what I've done for this family, the sacrifices I've made. Give me my son, Rebecca, now." Something dangerous flashed in her eyes. "Or what you'll call the police create a public scandal. Think of your reputation, William. Think of what the board will say when they hear the great William Parker was too busy making millions to notice his children were being abused under his own roof." "I don't care about my reputation." William took another step toward her. "All I care about are my children." Rebecca laughed, a cold sound that made Sophie flinch. "Since when you practically abandoned them after Elizabeth died? If it weren't for me, they would have been raised by nannies and housekeepers." "You're right," William's admission seemed to surprise her. "I failed them. I was selfish and cowardly, running from my grief instead of being the father they needed. But that ends now." For a tense moment, they stood facing each other, Ethan between them like a shield. Then Rebecca's expression changed, calculation replacing anger. "Let's be reasonable, William. We both want what's best for the children. I got a little strict with discipline, perhaps, but my intentions were good." Her voice softened. "We can work this out, the four of us together." William wasn't fooled by her abrupt change in tactics. "It's too late for that, Rebecca. I want you out of my house and out of our lives." Rebecca's face hardened again. "You'll regret this, William. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Before William could respond, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway interrupted them. Rebecca looked startled, then composed herself. "Expecting company?" she asked. "That would be Michael Hayes. I asked him to come over to discuss tomorrow's hearing." Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "In the middle of the night, how convenient." The doorbell rang, echoing through the house. William didn't take his eyes off Rebecca. "Sophie, sweetheart, go downstairs and let Mr. Hayes in. Tell him to come upstairs. Sophie hesitated. It's okay, go on. As Sophie hurried out of the room, Rebecca's grip on Ethan tightened. The baby began to fuss. You're hurting him, William said quietly. This isn't over, William. Rebecca's voice was cold. Not by a long shot. Actually, it is. William held her gaze steadily. I know about the burner phone. I know about your plans. I even know you've been accessing my financial records and will. Rebecca's face paled. You've been spying on me? Protecting my family, something I should have done from the beginning. Footsteps on the stairs announced Michael's arrival with Sophie. Rebecca glanced toward the door, calculating her options. With a final glare at William, she handed Ethan to him. Fine, take him, but don't think this changes anything. William cradled Ethan close, checking him quickly for injuries. The baby settled against his chest, tiny hands clutching his shirt. Michael Hayes appeared in the doorway, his expression grave. Sophie half hid behind his leg, peering anxiously into the room. Everything all right in here, William? Michael asked, his eyes moving between William and Rebecca. Everything's fine, William replied, not taking his eyes off Rebecca. Miss Morgan was just leaving. Leaving? Rebecca's laugh was brittle. In the middle of the night, I've booked you a room at the plaza, William said calmly. Your belongings will be delivered tomorrow. Rebecca's eyes blazed with fury, but with Michael present, she kept her composure. This is ridiculous. We can discuss this in the morning like rational adults. The car is waiting outside, Michael said. I took the liberty of arranging transport. Rebecca looked from William to Michael, then to the children. A cold smile spread across her face. Very well. I'll go for now. She stepped close to William, lowering her voice. But remember, William, you started this war and you have no idea what I'm capable of. She turned and walked out, her back straight, her movements controlled. William didn't relax until he heard the front door close. Michael raised an eyebrow. Charming woman. William sank onto the bed, still holding Ethan close, his adrenaline crashing. Thank you for coming. I brought what you asked for. Michael handed William a folder. Background check on Rebecca Morgan, or should I say Victoria Thompson? William looked up sharply. What? Michael nodded grimly. Rebecca Morgan doesn't exist. The woman you've been living with created that identity 5 years ago. Before that, she was Victoria Thompson, and she has quite a history. William opened the folder with trembling fingers, Ethan still clutched to his chest. The first page showed a younger version of Rebecca, her hair lighter, but her eyes unmistakable. The report detailed multiple accusations of fraud, suspected involvement in the deaths of 2 wealthy older men, and most disturbingly, a connection to William's brother Alexander. Alexander, William looked up in shock. My brother is involved in this. It appears they've known each other for at least 3 years. There are multiple phone records, hotel bookings, money transfers. The revelation struck William like a physical blow. Alexander, his only living relative. The brother he had supported through rehab paid gambling debts for given a job to when no one else would hire him. Why? William whispered. What could he possibly gain by hurting my children? Michael's expression was grim. According to your will, if anything happens to you and your children, Alexander inherits everything. William stared at the folder in his hands, the revelation of Alexander's betrayal like ice in his veins. His own brother had conspired against him against Sophie and Ethan. The thought was almost too painful to comprehend. How long, William asked, his voice hollow, how long has this been going on? Michael sat across from him in the living room, the first light of dawn creeping through the windows. They had been up all night reviewing the evidence against Rebecca, or Victoria, as she was really named. From what we can piece together, Victoria Thompson met your brother about 3 years ago at a casino in Atlantic City. Alexander was in significant debt at the time. Michael flipped through his notes. Shortly after she appears in Elizabeth's social circle, introducing herself as Rebecca Morgan, childhood friend from Connecticut. Elizabeth never mentioned her before then, William said, the memories flooding back. But suddenly Rebecca was everywhere, helping with the baby shower, bringing meals when Elizabeth was on bed rest. His voice trailed off as a terrible thought occurred to him. Michael, could Rebecca have had something to do with Elizabeth's death? Michael's expression was grave. The timing is suspicious. Rebecca became your live-in nanny within weeks of Elizabeth's passing, and the complications that killed Elizabeth were unexpected for someone with her medical history. William closed his eyes, grief and rage warring within him. I want Elizabeth's death investigated, discreetly. Already on it, Michael confirmed. I've contacted a forensic pathologist who specializes in reviewing suspicious deaths. If there's anything to find, he'll find it. Daddy, Sophie's small voice came from the doorway. William turned to see his daughter standing there in her pink pajamas, clutching the teddy bear she'd had since infancy. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, evidence of too many sleepless nights. Hey, princess. William forced a smile. You're up early. Sophie approached cautiously, glancing at Michael before climbing onto William's lap. Is Rebecca really gone? Yes, sweetheart. She won't be coming back. Sophie studied his face with solemn eyes. She'll try. She always says she gets what she wants. William exchanged glances with Michael over Sophie's head. What else does Rebecca say when I'm not around? Sophie hesitated, twisting the ear of her teddy bear. She talks on the phone to a man. She calls him Alex. They talk about money and the lake house. Sophie's voice dropped to a whisper. And about accidents. William felt his blood run cold. What kind of accidents, Sophie? Bad ones. She said you would have an accident like Mommy did. Michael stood abruptly. I'm calling Judge Harrison right now. We need an emergency restraining order. As Michael stepped out to make the call, William held Sophie close, his mind racing. The custody hearing was 6 hours away. 6 hours in which Rebecca and Alexander could plan their next move. Sophie, I need you to be very brave and tell me everything Rebecca said about these accidents. Can you do that? Sophie nodded against his chest. She told Alex that first the children would have accidents, then you would be so sad you'd have one too. She said it would look like you hurt us and then yourself because you were sad about Mommy. William fought to control the rage that threatened to consume him. These people had terrorized his daughter, using her grief and fear as weapons. Listen to me, Sophie. Nothing is going to happen to you or Ethan or me. I promise. We're going to be safe. And Rebecca is never going to hurt any of us again. Cross your heart, Sophie asked, looking up with eyes too old for her 7 years. Cross my heart. William made the childhood gesture. Now, do you think you can be my special helper today? I need someone very brave to keep an eye on Ethan while I talk to Mr. Michael about some grown-up things. Sophie nodded solemnly. I can do that. Ethan likes when I sing to him. That's perfect. William kissed the top of her head. Why don't you go check if he's awake? When Sophie had gone upstairs, Michael returned, his expression grim. Judge Harrison has granted the restraining order. Rebecca can't come within 500 feet of you or the children. But William, there's more. Victoria Thompson isn't her only alias. We've found at least 3 others, all with similar patterns. Similar how? She targets wealthy families, usually where one spouse has recently died or is terminally ill. She insinuates herself as a caregiver. Then accidents begin to happen. William felt ill. And no one has connected these cases. Different states, different names. She's careful. Michael handed him another file. This was Victoria Thompson 5 years ago in Seattle. Notice anything? William studied the photograph of a smiling brunette standing next to an elderly man in a wheelchair. She looks different, but those eyes, unmistakable. William looked closer at the man. That's Harold Winfield, tech millionaire. Died of a stroke 8 months after this photo was taken. His children from his first marriage were supposed to inherit everything, but a surprise new will left most of his estate to his devoted nurse, Victoria. Let me guess, William said bitterly. The children contested the will. They tried. Victoria disappeared with $3 million before the case went to court. Reappeared a year later as Rebecca Morgan with a new look and background story. And now she's targeted my family with Alexander's help. Speaking of your brother, Michael said, checking his phone, my investigator reports Alexander withdrew $50,000 in cash yesterday afternoon, purchased a one-way ticket to Mexico City. He's running. Not necessarily. Rebecca might not have told him about last night. We should use that to our advantage. William stopped pacing. You're suggesting I confront Alexander before he disappears. It might be our only chance to get concrete evidence against Rebecca. If Alexander thinks you're still in the dark about his involvement, he might reveal their plans. The idea of facing his brother, of pretending ignorance, while knowing of Alexander's betrayal, made William physically ill. But Michael was right. They needed evidence that would stand up in court, not just Sophie's testimony and circumstantial connections. Set it up, William said. But I want Martha here with the children while I'm gone in a security detail outside the house. Already arranged. And William, Michael looked at him seriously. Wear a wire. We need to record everything. 2 hours later, William sat in an upscale coffee shop in downtown Chicago, a discreet recording device concealed under his shirt. Alexander was late, which wasn't unusual. His younger brother had never been known for punctuality. William sipped his coffee, trying to calm his nerves. How could he face Alexander without revealing his knowledge of the betrayal? How could he look into the eyes of the man who had conspired to harm his children and not react with the rage boiling inside him? At last, Alexander appeared, pushing through the glass doors with his usual casual swagger. At 45, Alexander Parker was still handsome in a rakish way. His blonde hair stylishly tousled, his clothes expensive but deliberately casual, the very picture of the wealthy playboy living off his successful brother's generosity. Will, Alexander grinned, clapping William on the shoulder before sliding into the seat across from him. This is a surprise. Your assistant made it sound urgent. William forced a smile. Thanks for coming on short notice. Coffee? Something stronger wouldn't hurt. Alexander eyed him curiously. You look like hell, big brother. Trouble in paradise. William leaned forward, lowering his voice. It's Rebecca. There's been an incident. Alexander's smile faltered almost imperceptibly. Incident? What kind of incident? Sophie's in the hospital. Broken ribs, fractured wrist. The doctors are calling it abuse. William watched his brother's reaction carefully. Alexander's face showed concern, but his eyes calculated. Jesus, well, that's awful, but surely Rebecca wouldn't. She adores those kids. That's what I thought, William said, injecting doubt into his voice. But Sophie says Rebecca hurt her deliberately. Child Protective Services is involved now. Alexander ran a hand through his hair. Kids make up stories sometimes, especially after losing their mother. Sophie's probably confused, mixing up dreams with reality. The casual dismissal of Sophie's suffering made William want to reach across the table and grab his brother by the throat. Instead, he sighed heavily. Maybe, but there's a custody hearing this morning. If the judge believes Sophie, I could lose the kids. Alexander nodded sympathetically. That would be tragic. Absolutely tragic. Was there a hint of satisfaction in Alexander's voice? William couldn't be sure. I don't know what to do, Alex. Rebecca's moved out temporarily. I'm thinking of taking the kids to the lake house for a while. Get away from everything. Alexander's eyes sharpened with interest. The lake house, that's probably a good idea. When would you go? Tomorrow, maybe, if the hearing goes well. William hesitated, then added, Actually, I was hoping you might join us. I could use the support right now. The invitation clearly caught Alexander off guard. He recovered quickly, nodding with false enthusiasm. Of course, Will. Anything for my brother. Though I might need to join you a day or two later. Got some business to wrap up first. Business? William raised an eyebrow. I thought the Wellington project was on hold. Alexander waved dismissively. Other ventures. Nothing for you to worry about. William took another sip of coffee, watching his brother over the rim of his cup. It's funny. In all this chaos, I realized I never updated my will after Ethan was born. Should probably take care of that before we leave for the lake. Alexander's fingers tensed around his coffee cup. Probably a good idea, though I'm sure the current one is fine. Maybe, but it still lists you as guardian of Sophie if something happens to me with Ethan now. William paused thoughtfully. Given your lifestyle, I'm thinking Martha might be more suitable. The muscle in Alexander's jaw twitched. Martha, the housekeeper, well, she's got to be pushing 70. She loves those kids and they love her. William shrugged, just thinking out loud. Alexander's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression shifting subtly. Excuse me, Will. Need to take this. As Alexander stepped outside to take the call, William signaled to Michael, who was sitting at a table across the room pretending to read a newspaper. Michael nodded and discreetly moved closer to the window where Alexander stood. Through the glass, William could see his brother's animated gestures, his face flushed with agitation. When Alexander returned, his composure was barely intact. Everything okay? William asked innocently. Fine, fine. Just a client. Alexander glanced at his watch. Listen, Will, I hate to cut this short, but I've got a meeting across town. Call me after the hearing, okay, and seriously consider what I said about Sophie. Kids get confused. Don't let some overzealous social worker break up your family. William nodded, playing along. I'll keep that in mind. Thanks for meeting me, Alex. As Alexander hurried out of the coffee shop, Michael slid into the vacated seat. He called Rebecca, Michael said without preamble. My associate was close enough to hear. They're planning something at the lake house. Something about accelerating the timeline since you're getting suspicious. William felt cold dread settle in his stomach. Did they suspect I was recording them? I don't think so. Alexander seemed genuinely surprised by your invitation to the lake house. It's disrupted their planning. William removed the wire from under his shirt. Did we get enough? Alexander was careful. He never explicitly mentioned harming you or the children, but combined with the evidence against Rebecca and your daughter's testimony, it strengthens our case. William checked his watch. 2 hours until the hearing. Let's head back to the house. I want to go over Sophie's testimony one more time. The drive home was tense, William's mind racing with scenarios. How far would Rebecca and Alexander go? What was their ultimate plan? And most disturbingly, had they been responsible for Elizabeth's death? As they turned onto William's street, Michael suddenly tensed. William, look. A police car sat in William's driveway, lights flashing. Beside it stood Rebecca, talking animatedly to two officers. She spotted William's car and pointed her face a perfect mask of distress. What the hell? William pulled over sharply. Stay calm, Michael warned. This is a tactic. She's trying to regain control of the narrative. They exited the car as one of the officers approached. Mr. Parker, I'm Officer Davis. We received a call from Ms. Morgan alleging you've kidnapped her children and are refusing to let her see them. Her children. William felt his temper rising. Officer, those are my biological children. Ms. Morgan is not related to them in any way. She was my girlfriend until I discovered she was abusing my daughter. Rebecca stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. William, please. You can't keep the children from me. We're a family. The performance was flawless, her voice breaking with emotion. William had to admire her skill, even as he despised her duplicity. Officer, Michael interjected. I'm Michael Hayes, Mr. Parker's attorney. We have a temporary restraining order against Miss Morgan, issued by Judge Harrison this morning. He produced the document. She is legally prohibited from coming near this house or the Parker children. The officer examined the paperwork with a frown. This appears to be in order, ma'am. You shouldn't be here. Rebecca's expression shifted from distress to outrage. This is ridiculous. William is manipulating the system. Those children need me. What they need, William said coldly, is to be protected from someone who broke my daughter's ribs and fractured her wrist. Someone who left bruises on my infant son. Someone who has been planning God knows what with my brother. Rebecca's eyes narrowed at the mention of Alexander. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. Officers, Michael said smoothly, Ms. Morgan is currently under investigation by Child Protective Services. There's a custody hearing in less than 2 hours where all this will be addressed. I suggest you escort Ms. Morgan from the premises in accordance with the restraining order. The officers exchanged glances. Ma'am, you need to come with us. You can present your case to the judge at the hearing. Rebecca stood her ground. I want to see the children first. I have a right to see them. No, you don't, William said firmly. Not anymore. For a moment, Rebecca's mask slipped, completely revealing the cold calculation beneath. Then, composing herself, she turned to the officers. Fine, I'll go, but this isn't over, William. As the police escorted Rebecca to her car, William felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. Rebecca had escalated quickly, trying to use the authorities against him. What would her next move be? Inside the house, Martha Reynolds was sitting on the living room floor, with Sophie and Ethan building a tower of blocks. The elderly housekeeper looked up with relief when William entered. Thank goodness you're back, Mr. Parker. There was a dreadful scene outside. We handled it, Martha. Is everything okay in here? Sophie abandoned the blocks and ran to her father. Rebecca came to the door, Daddy. She was yelling and saying mean things. Martha wouldn't let her in. William lifted Sophie into his arms. You're safe now. Rebecca can't come near you anymore. Martha approached, wringing her hands. Mr. Parker, there's something else. While you were gone, I found this in Rebecca's dresser. She handed him a small vial with a handwritten label. Digitalis, William read aloud. Digitalis, he asked, turning to Michael, who took the vial with a frown. Isn't that a heart medication? In proper doses, Michael confirmed. In larger amounts, it causes heart failure that can mimic natural causes. The implications hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Elizabeth had died of heart failure following complications from childbirth. I need to call the pathologist, Michael said quietly, and the police. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of preparation. William and Michael coached Sophie gently for her possible testimony, assuring her she only needed to tell the truth. Martha packed an overnight bag for each of them as they would be staying at a hotel until Rebecca was no longer a threat. At the courthouse, William was surprised to see Dr. Olivia Walker, the child psychologist who had examined Sophie in the hospital. Dr. Walker, William greeted her, I didn't expect to see you here. The psychologist smiled gently. I felt I needed to be present. Sophie shared some concerning details during our session that the judge should hear. What kind of details? William asked, a knot forming in his stomach. Dr. Walker glanced at Sophie, who was sitting with Martha nearby. Sophie has been drawing pictures, disturbing ones showing a woman hurting a little girl and baby while a man watches. She pulled a folder from her bag. In her most recent drawing, the woman is giving something to a pregnant lady who then gets sick. William took the drawing with trembling hands. Sophie's childish figures were unmistakable. A dark-haired woman giving a bottle to a pregnant blonde woman, while a man who looked like Alexander stood in the background. Elizabeth, William whispered. She's drawing Rebecca poisoning Elizabeth. Dr. Walker nodded grimly. Children often express through art what they can't verbalize. Sophie may have witnessed something without understanding its significance at the time. William stared at the drawing, a wave of nausea washing over him. Sophie had seen something. His 7-year-old daughter had carried this terrible knowledge alone with no one to tell, no one who would believe her. Mr. Parker, the bailiff appeared at William's elbow. The hearing is about to begin. The family court was smaller than William had expected, with none of the grandeur of the criminal courts. Judge Angela Davis, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, peered at them over reading glasses as they filed in. Rebecca was already seated with her attorney, Victoria Hammond, a sharp-featured woman known for her aggressive tactics in custody cases. Rebecca had transformed herself, again wearing a modest navy dress, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, the very picture of a concerned maternal figure. As William took a seat, he noticed Alexander slipping into the back of the courtroom. Their eyes met briefly before Alexander looked away, an unreadable expression on his face. This is a preliminary hearing regarding the custody of minor children. Sophie Parker, age 7, and Ethan Parker, age 8 months. Judge Davis began. I understand there are allegations of abuse against Miss Rebecca Morgan, the children's primary caregiver. Mr. Hayes, please present your case. Michael rose, his manner respectful but firm. Your Honor, we are seeking sole custody for Mr. William Parker, the children's biological father, and a permanent restraining order against Miss Morgan, based on substantial evidence of physical and emotional abuse. Michael presented the medical reports detailing Sophie's injuries, then called Martha Reynolds to the stand. The elderly housekeeper testified about the changes in Rebecca's behavior when William was absent, the locked doors, the children's fear. Victoria Hammond's cross-examination was brutal. Mrs. Reynolds, isn't it true you resented Ms. Morgan from the beginning, that you saw her as replacing your role in the household? Martha remained composed. No, ma'am, I welcomed anyone who could help those poor children after their mother died. But what I witnessed was not help. It was cruelty. Dr. Walker testified next, presenting Sophie's drawings and her professional assessment that the child showed classic signs of abuse-related trauma. These drawings are particularly concerning, Dr. Walker explained, showing the courtroom Sophie's artwork, the consistent depiction of the female figure as threatening, the repeated imagery of physical harm, and most disturbingly, this drawing which appears to show the poisoning of a pregnant woman. Victoria Hammond objected immediately. Your Honor, this is pure speculation. A child's drawings are hardly evidence of anything beyond an act of imagination. On the contrary, Dr. Walker countered, children's artwork is a recognized diagnostic tool in cases of trauma. Sophie's drawings show remarkable consistency in the depiction of her abuser and the nature of the abuse. Judge Davis studied the drawings with a frown. I'll allow the testimony, but with appropriate weight given to its interpretive nature. Throughout the proceedings, William watched Rebecca. Her face remained composed, occasionally showing appropriate concern or gentle disapproval, but her eyes burned with a cold fury that belied her calm exterior. When it was Victoria Hammond's turn to present her case, she painted Rebecca as the victim of a wealthy man's capricious accusations. Ms. Morgan stepped into this broken family at its darkest hour, Hammond declared. She sacrificed her own career and personal life to care for these children when Mr. Parker was too consumed with grief and work to fulfill his paternal duties. Now that he's suddenly decided to be a father again, he finds it convenient to push aside the woman who has been these children's true parent for nearly a year. William felt the sting of truth in Hammond's words. He had abdicated his responsibilities, leaving his children vulnerable to Rebecca's machinations. The knowledge of his failure burned like acid in his chest. Rebecca took the stand, her performance flawless. Tears filled her eyes as she described her love for the children, her efforts to help them heal after their mother's death, her shock at William's accusations. "I would never hurt Sophie or Ethan," she said, her voice breaking. "They're like my own children. Sometimes Sophie needs firm guidance. She's been acting out since her mother died, but abuse never." "And how do you explain the medical evidence?" Michael asked during cross-examination. "The broken ribs, the fractured wrist." Rebecca dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "Sophie has always been an active child. She climbs trees, jumps from furniture. I've warned William countless times about her risky behavior, but he rarely paid attention to such details." "And the bruises on Ethan's arms?" "Babies bruise easily," Rebecca said smoothly. "Ethan is learning to crawl. He bumps into things. Any pediatrician will tell you this is normal." Michael changed tactics. "Ms. Morgan, or should I say Ms. Thompson, Victoria Thompson, Elizabeth Palmer, Jennifer White, how many identities have you assumed over the years?" Rebecca's composure slipped momentarily. "I don't know what you're talking about. My name is Rebecca Morgan." Michael handed Judge Davis a folder. "Your Honor, we have evidence that Ms. Morgan has operated under at least 4 different identities in the past decade, each time insinuating herself into wealthy families experiencing loss or illness, each time followed by suspicious accidents." Victoria Hammond was on her feet instantly. "Objection. This is character assassination with no relevance to the custody matter at hand." "On the contrary," Michael countered, "it goes directly to Ms. Morgan's credibility and the potential danger to the Parker children." Judge Davis reviewed the documents with a deepening frown. "I'll allow it. Ms. Morgan, please answer the question." Rebecca's mask cracked further. "People change their names for many reasons. Privacy, fresh starts. There's nothing sinister about it." "And your relationship with Alexander Parker," Michael pressed. "How long have you been conspiring with Mr. Parker's brother?" At the back of the courtroom, Alexander half rose from his seat, then thought better of it and sat down again. "Conspiring?" Rebecca laughed, though the sound held no humor. "Alexander is William's brother. Of course I know him. There's no conspiracy." Michael produced the phone records showing frequent communication between Rebecca and Alexander, the hotel bookings, the money transfers. "Your Honor," Michael said, "we have reason to believe Ms. Morgan and Alexander Parker have been planning to harm Mr. Parker and his children for financial gain. Alexander Parker stands to inherit everything if William and his children die." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Davis banged her gavel. "Order, Mr. Hayes, these are extremely serious allegations." "Yes, Your Honor, and we are prepared to prove them." Michael turned back to Rebecca. "Ms. Morgan, can you explain why digitalis was found in your possession, a drug that in high doses can cause heart failure, similar to what killed Elizabeth Parker?" Rebecca's face went pale. That's a plant. Martha must have put it there. She's always hated me." "Your Honor," Michael said, "we request that Sophie Parker be allowed to testify. She has crucial information regarding Mrs. Morgan's behavior and intentions." Judge Davis looked troubled. "Is that necessary? The child has already been through significant trauma." "Sophie has requested to speak, Your Honor. She understands the importance of telling her story." After a moment's consideration, Judge Davis nodded. "Very well, but I want this handled with the utmost sensitivity." Sophie entered the courtroom holding Martha's hand, her small face solemn. She wore a simple blue dress, her golden hair tied back with a ribbon. When she saw Rebecca, she faltered, pressing closer to Martha. "It's okay, sweetheart," Judge Davis said gently, coming down from her bench to sit in a chair at Sophie's level. "No one is going to hurt you here." I just want to ask you a few questions. Okay. Sophie nodded, her eyes huge in her pale face. Can you tell me what happens when you're at home with Rebecca? Judge Davis asked. Sophie glanced at her father, who gave her an encouraging nod. When Daddy is home, Rebecca is nice. Sophie began, her voice small but clear. She smiles and talks sweet and makes good food. But when Daddy goes away, everything changes. How does it change, Sophie? Rebecca gets mean. She yells and says bad words. She locks me and Ethan in our rooms if we make noise or make a mess. Sophie's voice quavered. Sometimes she doesn't give us much food. She says we're being greedy if we ask for more. William felt each word like a physical blow, the evidence of his failure to protect his children laid bare. Has Rebecca ever hurt you physically, Sophie? Judge Davis asked gently. Sophie nodded, tears filling her eyes. She grabs my arms really hard when I do something wrong, and she grabbed Ethan too, even though he's just a baby. Last week she got really mad when I spilled juice and pushed me down the stairs. Then she told Daddy I fell. Victoria Hammond stood. Your Honor, children often exaggerate or confuse discipline with abuse. Sophie is clearly repeating stories her father has coached her to tell. I'm not lying, Sophie cried, suddenly indignant. Rebecca hurt me and Ethan lots of times, and she hurt my mommy too. A hush fell over the courtroom. What do you mean, Sophie? Judge Davis asked carefully. I saw her, Sophie said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Before Ethan was born, when Mommy was really big in her tummy, Rebecca came to help, but she put something in Mommy's tea when no one was looking. Mommy got sick after that. Rebecca shot to her feet. This is absurd. The child is making up stories. Order, Judge Davis banged her gavel. Ms. Morgan, sit down immediately. Sophie continued, gaining confidence. Rebecca talks to Uncle Alex on the phone about accidents. She says Daddy needs to have an accident like Mommy did. She says they need to hurry before Daddy changes his will. From the back of the courtroom, Alexander Parker stood abruptly and headed for the exit. A bailiff moved to block his path. Your Honor, Michael said, we request that Alexander Parker be detained for questioning regarding these allegations. Before Judge Davis could respond, Rebecca's composure shattered completely. You stupid little brat, she shrieked at Sophie. You were supposed to be asleep. No one would have believed you anyway. The outburst confirmed everything. The courtroom erupted in chaos as Judge Davis banged her gavel repeatedly. Bailiff, take Ms. Morgan into custody, she ordered. Mr. Parker, you and your children are to remain under court protection until this matter is fully investigated. As the bailiffs led a struggling Rebecca away, she locked eyes with William. This isn't over, William, she hissed. Not by a long shot. William rushed to Sophie, gathering her into his arms. You were so brave, sweetheart. So incredibly brave. Sophie clung to him, her small body shaking with relief. Is it really over? Daddy, is Rebecca gone for good? William looked over at Alexander, now being questioned by court officers, then at Rebecca being led away in handcuffs. Yes, sweetheart, it's over. They can't hurt us anymore. But even as he spoke the words, William Heck knew the battle was far from over. Rebecca and Alexander had been planning this for years. They wouldn't give up easily, and somewhere deep in his soul, William Hare knew that Elizabeth's death had not been from natural causes. His children had been targeted from the beginning. As they left the courthouse under police escort, William made a silent vow. He would uncover the full truth about Rebecca Thompson and his brother. He would get justice for Elizabeth, and most importantly, he would never again fail in his duty to protect his children. The hotel suite felt like a sanctuary after the intensity of the courthouse. Sophie sat on the plush sofa beside Martha, coloring quietly while Ethan napped in a portable crib. William stood by the window watching the city lights come on as dusk fell. Michael entered, his face grave. The police searched Rebecca's apartment. They found more digitalis fake identification documents and, most damning, a detailed journal outlining her relationship with Alexander and their plans for you and the children. And Elizabeth? William asked, his voice hollow. Was her death part of their plan too? Michael hesitated, glancing at Sophie. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. William nodded. Martha, could you take Sophie to get some ice cream from the hotel restaurant? Ethan should sleep for another hour. After they left, Michael handed William a thin folder. The preliminary report from the pathologist who reviewed Elizabeth's medical records. He's requesting permission to exhume her body for further testing, but he's already found irregularities in the original autopsy. William opened the folder with trembling hands. The medical terminology swam before his eyes, but certain phrases stood out starkly, consistent with digitalis poisoning, misdiagnosed as natural heart failure, gradual administration over time. They killed her, William whispered, grief and rage choking his voice. Rebecca poisoned Elizabeth while pretending to help her through the pregnancy. And Alexander, my own brother. Alexander is talking, Michael said, trying to cut a deal. He claims Rebecca masterminded everything, that he was just following her lead. William laughed bitterly. Of course he is. Alexander never takes responsibility for anything. According to his statement, the original plan was for Rebecca to marry you after a suitable mourning period. But you were resistant to the idea, so they developed an alternate plan involving the children's accidents, followed by your suicide. William closed the folder, unable to bear anymore. What happens now? Rebecca will be charged with child abuse immediately, with more serious charges pending the investigation into Elizabeth's death. Alexander is facing conspiracy charges at minimum. Michael's expression softened slightly. The children are safe, William. That's what matters most right now. William nodded, moving to check on Ethan. The baby slept peacefully, unaware of the danger that had surrounded him. William gently touched his son's soft cheek, marveling at his innocence. I failed them, Michael, he said quietly. I was so consumed by my own grief that I left my children vulnerable to monsters. You're here now, Michael replied. That's what counts. A soft knock at the door interrupted them. Michael opened it cautiously, then stepped aside to admit a police detective. Mr. Parker, I'm Detective Ramirez. I'm afraid I have some disturbing news. Rebecca Thompson has escaped custody. Escaped custody. William felt the blood drain from his face. How is that possible? Detective Ramirez's expression darkened. This wasn't a random opportunity she seized. She had an accomplice, a nurse at the processing center, who slipped her a key to the restraints. When they transferred her to the hospital for supposed chest pains, a black sedan was waiting at the emergency entrance with a female driver. We're still trying to identify her. Female driver, William exchanged worried glances with Michael. We believe Rebecca has a network we weren't aware of, Ramirez continued. The nurse has connections to Harold Winfield's estate, the tech millionaire whose death Rebecca profited from in Seattle. This was planned well before she was even arrested. William moved to the window, scanning the street below as if expecting to see Rebecca watching from the shadows. She's coming for the children. That's what she meant when she said it wasn't over. We've stationed officers outside your suite, Ramirez assured him, and we've alerted all transportation hubs. Every precaution is being taken. William wasn't comforted. You don't know Rebecca. She has contingencies for her contingencies. A terrible thought struck him. Martha and Sophie, they're downstairs in the restaurant. Without waiting for a response, William rushed from the suite, Ramirez close behind. The hotel's restaurant was half full with early dinner patrons, but William saw no sign of Martha or his daughter. They should be here, he said, panic rising in his throat. Martha specifically said they'd be at table 12 near the window. The hostess approached with a professional smile. Can I help you, sir? An elderly woman and a little girl, William said urgently. They should have been seated about 20 minutes ago at table 12. The hostess checked her tablet. Oh yes, Mrs. Reynolds. She and the little girl were seated there, but they left about 10 minutes ago. A hotel staff member delivered a message that you needed them upstairs immediately. Hotel staff? Wow. William felt his world collapse. What did this person look like? A woman in a hotel uniform, blonde hair tucked under her cap. She had proper ID. The hostess's smile faltered at William's expression. Is something wrong? Ramirez was already on his radio. All units, we have a possible child abduction in progress at the Parkview Hotel. Elderly woman and 7-year-old girl suspect posing as hotel staff. The hotel's security office was a cramped room filled with monitors. The head of security quickly accessed the restaurant footage. There, William pointed as Martha and Sophie appeared on screen, seated at their table. 10 minutes later, a blonde woman in a hotel uniform approached, leaning down to speak to them. Martha looked surprised but nodded, and they followed the woman out. Run the footage through all cameras, Ramirez ordered. The security chief tracked their movement through the lobby to the service elevator. They took the service elevator to the parking garage. The parking garage cameras showed the three entering a black SUV with tinted windows. As the vehicle pulled away, the driver turned briefly toward the camera. "Stop!" William exclaimed. "Go back." The security chief rewound the footage. William leaned closer, studying the woman's face. "Those eyes," he whispered. "It's Rebecca. She's wearing a disguise, but I'd know those eyes anywhere." "What about the other woman?" Ramirez asked, pointing to the driver. "She looks familiar." William studied the grainy image. "I've never seen her before." "I have," Michael said grimly. "That's Jennifer White, another of Rebecca's identities from 5 years ago." "Which means there are two Rebeccas," William finished, horror dawning. "She has an accomplice who looks like her." Ramirez was already updating his team. William stood frozen, watching the SUV disappear, with his daughter and Martha. "Ethan," he suddenly remembered. "We need to get back to the suite." They rushed back upstairs to find Michael standing protectively over Ethan's crib, his phone pressed to his ear. "Any sign of them?" Michael asked, hanging up. William shook his head, his face ashen. "It wasn't just Rebecca. She has a doppelganger, someone who looks enough like her to fool cameras and witnesses." Michael cursed under his breath. The judge just called. The search warrant for Alexander's properties turned up something unexpected. "We found financial records linking Rebecca to 3 other people. They're all women who match her general description. They've been working together for years, targeting wealthy families." William felt physically ill. "A team of con artists." "More like a family business," Michael said. "Based on the DNA records we found, they appear to be sisters." Sisters," William repeated numbly. "And now they have my daughter and Martha." "We've identified a property," Ramirez interrupted, checking his phone. "Alexander apparently owns a cabin near your lake house that wasn't in his name, purchased through a shell company 3 years ago." "That's where they're taking them," William said with certainty. "It's remote, isolated, no witnesses." "We've dispatched units to the location," Ramirez said, "but it's nearly 2 hours away." "I'm coming with you," William said, gathering Ethan from his crib. "Mr. Parker, I strongly advise—" "That's my daughter," William cut him off, his voice like steel. "And Martha has been family for 20 years. I'm coming. End of discussion." The drive to the Lake District was torturous. William clutched Ethan to his chest in the backseat of Ramirez's unmarked police vehicle. The baby mercifully slept despite the tension surrounding him. "They won't hurt Sophie," Michael said from the front passenger seat, as Ramirez drove with lights flashing, but sirens silent. "They need her as leverage." "You don't know what Rebecca's capable of," William said. "She poisoned Elizabeth over months, watching her suffer. And Sophie," his voice broke. "Sophie saw it happening. That little girl has carried this knowledge alone all this time." His phone rang an unknown number. William answered immediately, putting it on speaker. "Hello, William." Rebecca's voice was calm, almost pleasant. "I assume by now you've discovered our little detour with Sophie and the old woman. If you harm one hair on her head—" Now, Rebecca interrupted smoothly. "Is that any way to talk to someone holding all the cards? Sophie's fine. For now. So is Martha, though I can't promise her heart can take much more excitement at her age." "What do you want, Rebecca?" "I want what's always been rightfully mine." Her voice hardened. "You were supposed to be mine. Those children were supposed to be mine. That was the plan until you started getting suspicious." "The plan, William couldn't contain his disgust. "You killed my wife. You abused my children. You were never going to be part of this family." "Elizabeth was weak," Rebecca spat, her composure cracking. "She didn't deserve you or your fortune. I've spent years preparing for this, William. Years playing the devoted friend, the perfect nanny. I'd earned this life." William struggled to keep his voice level. "Tell me what you want now. How do we end this?" A pause. "Well, bring Ethan and come to Alexander's cabin alone, no police. I'll text you the address. You have 1 hour. If I see anyone but you and the baby, Sophie pays the price." The call disconnected. Moments later, a text arrived with GPS coordinates. "You can't go alone," Ramirez said immediately. "It's a trap." "Of course it is," William agreed, "but I'm still going." "We'll position our team in the woods surrounding the cabin," Ramirez said. "But we need a way to communicate when it's safe to move in." William nodded grimly. Then a thought struck him. "Wait, Sophie's teddy bear, Mr. Whiskers." "The teddy bear," Ramirez looked confused. It has a hidden camera inside, William explained. Sophie used it to record Rebecca's abuse. She always keeps it with her. If she has it now, Michael was already making a call. Or Walker has the access code. If the bear is still active and in range, we might be able to see inside the cabin. 20 minutes later, they pulled off the main road onto a Forest Service path about a mile from the cabin coordinates. Several unmarked police vehicles were already stationed there. One of the officers approached with a laptop. "We've accessed the feed from the teddy bear," he reported. "It's active, but the signal is weak. We're only getting intermittent footage." William peered at the screen. The image was grainy and kept freezing, but he could make out a rustic cabin interior. Sophie sat on a sofa, Martha beside her. The elderly woman had a bruise on her cheek, but appeared otherwise unharmed. Sophie was clutching Mr. Whiskers to her chest, the bear's hidden camera capturing the room at an odd angle. Two women moved in and out of frame. One was unmistakably Rebecca, her blonde wig discarded. The other looked remarkably like her, but with subtle differences in facial structure, the sister presumably. "They're both armed," Ramirez noted, pointing to the handguns visible in their waistbands. The audio crackled to life. "Should have been here by now," Rebecca was saying. "Maybe he called the police," the other woman suggested. "He won't risk his precious daughter," Rebecca replied confidently. "And if he does," she glanced at Sophie with a chilling smile, "we have other options." William felt rage burning in his chest. "I need to get in there now." Ramirez handed him a small device. "This goes in your shoe. 3 quick taps and we move in." "But William," he looked the father in the eye, "try to get them separated. 2 armed suspects makes this exponentially more dangerous." William secured Ethan in a carrier on his chest. "If I'm not out with both Sophie and Martha, in 30 minutes come in regardless. Don't wait for the signal." Michael gripped his shoulder. "Be careful. They're desperate now, which makes them unpredictable." The short drive to the cabin felt like crossing into another world. The narrow dirt road wound through dense forest, ending at a small clearing where a rustic cabin stood, smoke rising from its chimney. William parked his car and took a deep breath, gently touching Ethan's head before approaching the door. Before he could knock, the door swung open. Rebecca stood there, her natural dark hair pulled back severely from her face. She wore practical clothes now, jeans and a black sweater, and her eyes were cold and calculating. "Right on time," she said, stepping aside. "Always the reliable businessman." As William entered, he saw Sophie on the sofa, her eyes lighting up at the sight of him. Martha sat beside her, back straight, despite the bruise darkening on her cheek. "Daddy," Sophie cried, starting to rise. "Stay there, brat." Rebecca snapped her hand, moving to the gun in her waistband. "Family reunion comes later." The second woman emerged from what appeared to be a back bedroom. Up close, the resemblance to Rebecca was even more striking, though this woman was slightly taller and thinner. "This is my sister Vanessa," Rebecca said with a cold smile. "You've never met, but she's been watching your family for years. She was the one who first suggested Elizabeth as a target." "Charming." William fought to keep his expression neutral despite the surge of rage. "I'm here, Rebecca, just like you asked. Now let Martha and Sophie go." Rebecca laughed, the sound brittle. "You're not in a position to make demands. William, put the baby in the playpen over there and step back." William complied, gently laying Ethan in the portable playpen set up in the corner. The baby immediately began to fuss, reaching for his father. "Now, Mandan," Rebecca said, "let's discuss our future arrangements." "There are no arrangements to discuss," William replied coldly. "It's over, Rebecca. The police know everything about Elizabeth, about your network of sisters, about Alexander's involvement. You can't disappear this time." "Can't we?" She exchanged glances with Vanessa. "We have new identities," prepared William. "New documents, new lives for our family." "We are not a family." "We could have been." Something like genuine regret flickered across Rebecca's face. "If you had just fallen for me like you were supposed to, none of this would have been necessary. Elizabeth was never right for you. Too soft, too conventional. I could have given you so much more." "Elizabeth was my wife," William said, voice steady despite his fury. "The mother of my children, the love of my life. You were never going to replace her." Rebecca's expression hardened. "Well, it's too late for regrets now. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign these papers." She gestured to documents spread on a table. transferring guardianship of the children to me in the event of your death. Then you're going to write a suicide note confessing to abusing Sophie and expressing your remorse. And then what? William asked, already knowing the answer. You kill me and disappear with my children. They'll be well cared for, Rebecca said, as if offering a consolation. I've always wanted children. Sophie will adjust eventually, and Ethan won't even remember you. William glanced at Sophie, whose blue eyes were wide with fear, but also a startling determination. She clutched Mr. Whiskers tighter to her chest, and William realized the bear's camera was still transmitting to the police outside. She gave him the smallest of nods, and William understood his daughter was far braver than he had ever imagined. Before I sign anything, William said carefully, I want to speak with Sophie alone. Not a chance, Rebecca scoffed. Just for a minute, a father's goodbye. Surely you can grant me that much. Rebecca exchanged glances with Vanessa, then nodded reluctantly. 1 minute right here where we can see you. No whispering. William moved to the sofa, kneeling before Sophie. He took her small hands in his eyes searching her face. Are you okay, sweetheart? He asked gently. Sophie nodded. I'm scared, Daddy, but I'm being brave. Mr. Whiskers is helping me. William understood immediately. You're the bravest person I know, Sophie. He squeezed her hands. I need you to listen carefully. When I say the word now, I want you to drop to the floor and pull Martha down with you. Can you do that? Sophie's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded again. Yes, Daddy. That's my girl. William pressed a kiss to her forehead before standing. Touching, Rebecca said sarcastically. Now sign the papers, William. My patience is wearing thin. William moved to the table, picking up the pen Rebecca had left beside the documents. He scanned the pages quickly, legal forms for guardianship transfer, a typed suicide note awaiting his signature. You really thought of everything, he said, stalling for time as he calculated the distance between the sisters and their weapons. We always do. Rebecca stepped closer, watching as he poised the pen over the signature line. It's what makes us so good at this. Just one question, William said, looking up at her. Why Elizabeth? Why not just pursue me directly? Why kill an innocent woman? Something like genuine emotion crossed Rebecca's face. Because she had everything I ever wanted. The perfect husband, the beautiful home, the adoring daughter. It should have been mine. You never even knew me before Elizabeth died, William said, bewildered. How could you have wanted what was hers? Rebecca's smile was chilling. Oh, William, I've known who you were for years, ever since Alexander started working for your company. He used to talk about his successful brother. The perfect life you had. I decided then that it should be mine instead. The pieces clicked into place. Alexander introduced you to Elizabeth. You became her friend, deliberately planning to take her place all along. Smart man, Rebecca nodded appreciatively. Though it took you long enough to figure it out. Now sign the papers. We're done talking. As William pretended to read the documents, he noticed a movement in the hallway behind Rebecca. A figure appeared briefly in the shadows, Alexander looking haggard and uncertain. Their eyes met for a brief moment before Alexander stepped back out of sight. William looked down at the document, then at Ethan in the playpen at Martha, watching him with steady eyes, and finally at Sophie, his brave little girl still clutching Mr. Whiskers. Now, he shouted, lunging toward Rebecca. Sophie reacted instantly, pulling Martha to the floor as William tackled Rebecca. The gun discharged with a deafening report, the bullet splintering wood somewhere above their heads. William grappled with Rebecca, his greater strength giving him the advantage, despite her vicious resistance. Vanessa moved to aim her weapon at William, but suddenly Alexander appeared behind her, grabbing her arm and forcing it upward. The gun fired into the ceiling as they struggled. Run! William shouted to Sophie and Martha. Get outside! Martha pulled Sophie toward the door as William pinned Rebecca to the floor, knocking the gun from her grasp. It skittered across the hardwood, stopping near the wall. Rebecca's face contorted with fury. You'll regret this, she hissed, clawing at his face. I'll never stop coming for what's mine. They were never yours, William growled, struggling to restrain her wrists. And you'll never get near my children again. In the corner of the room, Alexander and Vanessa continued to fight for control of the second gun. Vanessa was surprisingly strong for her size, and Alexander was clearly struggling. The gun discharged again, and Alexander cried out, blood blooming on his shoulder. He staggered backward, but managed to stay on his feet. "Alex," William called out, still restraining a thrashing Rebecca. "I'm okay," Alexander gasped. "Well, I didn't know what they were planning for the kids. I swear I never wanted them hurt." "Liar," Vanessa spat, aiming the gun at Alexander. "You knew everything. You introduced us to Elizabeth. You helped plan her murder." "I thought it was about the money," Alexander said, voice breaking. "I didn't know about Elizabeth until it was too late. And the children, I never agreed to harm the children." Rebecca laughed bitterly beneath William. Poor Alex. Always the weak link. Always the disappointment. William heard sirens approaching. The police had seen enough through Mr. Whisker's camera. He needed to keep the sisters talking until help arrived. "How many others?" he demanded. "How many families have you destroyed?" Rebecca's smile was cold with pride. "We're artists, William. We create new lives from the ashes of the old. The Winfields in Seattle, the Montgomerys in Boston, the Jongs in San Francisco. We bring justice to those who don't deserve their wealth and privilege." "Justice," William couldn't hide his disgust. "You're nothing but common murderers." "We're survivors," Rebecca snarled. "While you grew up with everything, we grew up with nothing. Four sisters in the foster system passed around like unwanted baggage. We made ourselves into the perfect chameleons, and we take what should have been ours all along." The cabin door burst open. Detective Ramirez and his team rushed in, weapons drawn. "Police, freeze!" William rolled away from Rebecca, raising his hands. "She's unarmed now. The gun's by the wall." Officers secured Rebecca as Ramirez moved to where Vanessa still held her weapon, now pointed at Alexander. "Drop the gun," Ramirez ordered. "It's over." Vanessa's eyes darted around the room, calculating even now. For a terrible moment, William thought she might start shooting. Then slowly she lowered the weapon. "This isn't over," she said calmly. "This is merely an intermission. Family takes care of family." As officers led the sisters away in handcuffs, paramedics entered to tend to Alexander's wound. William rushed to Ethan, gathering the baby in his arms. The infant had remarkably slept through most of the chaos, only now beginning to stir. "Mr. Parker," an officer approached. "Your daughter and Mrs. Reynolds are safe in the police car." William hurried outside, Ethan clutched to his chest. Sophie sat in the back of a police cruiser, still holding Mr. Whiskers tightly. When she saw her father, her face lit up with pure joy. "Daddy," she cried, scrambling out to run into his arms. "You did it. You beat the bad ladies." William knelt, balancing Ethan in one arm while embracing Sophie with the other. "We did it together, Sophie. You and Mr. Whiskers were the real heroes today." Sophie looked down at her teddy bear. "He helped us, didn't he? Just like I knew he would." "Yes, sweetheart. Your secret camera bear helped the police see what was happening inside." Martha approached, looking shaken but dignified despite the bruise on her cheek. "Mr. Parker, I'm so sorry. That woman had a hotel ID. I should have been more careful." "This isn't your fault, Martha," William said firmly, putting an arm around her shoulders. "They had been planning this for years. I'm just thankful you're both safe." As the sisters were placed in separate police vehicles, Rebecca caught William's eye through the window. She mouthed something that sent a chill down his spine. Not over. Alexander was being loaded into an ambulance, his shoulder bandaged. William approached Sophie, still clinging to his side. "Will," Alexander said weakly, "I know you won't believe me, but I didn't know they were going to hurt the kids. I thought it was just about the money." William studied his brother's face, searching for truth. "Why, Alex? Why did you do this to us?" Alexander's eyes filled with tears. "I was drowning in debt. Rebecca found me at my lowest point, made me feel special, needed. By the time I realized what she really was, I was in too deep." He looked away in shame. "I deserve whatever happens next." "Uncle Alex helped at the end," Sophie said unexpectedly. "He stopped the other bad lady from shooting you, Daddy." Alexander looked at his niece in surprise, then back at William. "I know I can't ever make this right, but I had to try to do one good thing, at least." William felt nothing but emptiness where his anger had been. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Alex, but Sophie's right. You did help us today. That's something." As Alexander was loaded into the ambulance, Detective Ramirez approached William. "We found evidence of an extensive criminal network in Rebecca's possession. 4 sisters operating across 5 states for over a decade. This is much bigger than we thought." "Will they go away for good?" William asked, thinking of Rebecca's ominous parting message. With the evidence we have now, plus what was already gathered about Elizabeth's death, they're looking at multiple life sentences. Ramirez hesitated. But William, there's something else you should know. We found communications suggesting they have other accomplices we haven't identified yet. William felt a chill despite the warm evening. What kind of accomplices? People they've groomed over the years. People who might still be loyal to them. Ramirez's expression was grave. I strongly recommend you and your family relocate at least temporarily. 6 months later, William stood into the garden of their new home in a different state, watching Sophie and Ethan playing under the watchful eye of their security team, former military personnel who had become like extended family. The house was smaller than their previous mansion, but filled with warmth and light. Martha had her own suite on the ground floor and had taken to baking cookies with Sophie every Saturday morning. William had restructured his business to allow him to work primarily from home, stepping back from the CEO role to focus on what truly mattered: his family. The company was thriving under the new leadership team, and William found he didn't miss the constant travel and late nights at the office. Dr. Olivia Walker's car pulled into the driveway for Sophie's weekly therapy session. Though the frequency of these visits had decreased, Sophie still benefited from the gentle guidance that helped her process her trauma. Walker's here," William called out. Sophie looked up from the sandcastle she was building with Ethan. Can I show her my new pictures I drew our family tree for school? Of course you can, sweetheart. William smiled. Sophie's artwork had evolved from the dark, frightening images of the past to bright, hopeful depictions of their new life. As Olivia approached, William greeted her warmly. How are you? Oh, I should be asking you that, she replied with a smile. You're the one who had the meeting with the prosecutor yesterday. William nodded, his expression turning serious. All 4 sisters have now been charged in Elizabeth's death. The DNA evidence from the exhumation was conclusive traces of digitalis match samples found in Rebecca's possession. That must bring some closure, Olivia said quietly. It does and it doesn't. William watched Sophie showing Ethan how to shape the sand into towers. Loving will bring Elizabeth back, but at least now, Sophie knows that people believe her, that what she saw really happened. And Alexander, they heard he's testifying against the sisters in exchange for a reduced sentence. William's feelings about his brother remained complicated. Alexander had written numerous letters of apology from prison, attending therapy and addiction treatment. William had finally answered one letter last month, not with forgiveness, but with acknowledgement of Alexander's efforts to change. The DA thinks he'll serve 5 years with good behavior. How do you feel about that? William considered the question carefully. Part of me wants to hold on to the anger forever, but Sophie asked me something last week that I can't stop thinking about. What was that? She asked if being angry at Uncle Alex forever would make Mommy happy. William's voice softened. Out of the mouths of babes. Right. Elizabeth always believed in second chances. Maybe someday I can find a way to honor that part of her. Sophie spotted them talking and ran over the sand, clinging to her shorts. Dr. Olivia want to see the special sandcastle we made? It has a moat and everything. I'd love to see it, Sophie. Olivia smiled, allowing herself to be led by the hand. As they walked away, Martha joined William on the patio. Mr. Parker, this came for you today. She handed him an envelope. It's from the prison. William tensed. All mail was screened now, but anything from the prison where Rebecca and her sisters were held still made his heart race. He opened it carefully. Inside was a brief official notice. Rebecca Thompson had been found dead in her cell that morning, apparent suicide. The preliminary investigation suggested she had been planning it for weeks, hoarding medication. A note found in her possession had contained just 3 words, family endures always. William felt a complex wave of emotions: relief, disbelief, and a lingering unease. Rebecca had been the mastermind, the most dangerous of the sisters. With her gone, perhaps the threat truly was diminishing. Is everything all right, sir? Martha asked, noting his expression. Yes, William said, tucking the letter away. Actually, I think it might be. That evening, after putting the children to bed, William sat on the porch swing, listening to the night sounds of their suburban neighborhood, so different from the isolated mansion they'd left behind, with its echoing halls and shadowed corners. Here, neighbors checked in on each other. Children rode bikes on sidewalks. Normal life unfolded all around them, healing in its ordinariness. The security system beeped softly as the night shift arrived, a reminder that normal didn't mean unprotected. William had found the balance between vigilance and paranoia, creating a life where his children could feel both safe and free. His phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Call me when you can. Important update on Vanessa's case." William was about to call when he heard a soft voice from the doorway. "Daddy, I had a dream." He turned to see Sophie in her nightgown, her golden hair tousled from sleep. "A bad one, sweetheart." She shook her head, climbing onto the swing beside him. "No, it was about Mommy. She was in our garden planting flowers, and she was smiling. She told me to tell you that we're okay now, that we're safe." William felt his throat tighten with emotion. "That sounds like a very good dream, Sophie." "It wasn't scary at all," Sophie confirmed, leaning against his side. "Olivia says dreams like that are healing dreams. They help our hearts feel better." "Their Olivia is very wise," William said, putting his arm around his daughter's shoulders once. They sat together in comfortable silence, the swing moving gently back and forth. After a while, Sophie spoke again. "Daddy, is it true that the bad lady can't hurt us anymore? I heard you talking to Martha." William hesitated, always careful to be truthful with Sophie without burdening her. "Yes, sweetheart. Rebecca's gone now. She can't hurt anyone anymore." Sophie nodded, absorbing this. "What about the other bad ladies?" "They're going to stay in prison for a very long time." William squeezed her shoulder gently. "And we have people watching over us, keeping us safe. Like guardian angels." William smiled. "Something like that, plus our special security system and Mr. Rodriguez's team." Sophie was quiet for a moment, then said with childish certainty, "And we have Mr. Whiskers, too. He protects us." William looked at the well-worn teddy bear clutched in Sophie's arms. The hidden camera had been removed months ago, but Sophie still treated the stuffed animal as her special protector. In many ways, it was that bear had helped save their lives. "Yes," William agreed. "We have Mr. Whiskers, too." Sophie yawned, her eyes growing heavy. "I like our new home, Daddy. I don't want to leave." "We won't have to leave," William assured her. "This is our home now, for as long as we want it to be." "Promise, I promise," William kissed the top of her head. "Cross my heart." As Sophie drifted back to sleep against his shoulder, William called Michael. "What's the update?" "Vanessa's talking," Michael said. "After hearing about Rebecca's death, she's decided to cooperate in exchange for protection. She's naming names, William, people who worked with them, financial backers, potential targets." "Is this really the end then?" William hardly dared to hope. "I think it might be," Michael replied. "The sisters' network is unraveling fast." And Vanessa confirmed something else. "Elizabeth wasn't just a random target. She was chosen specifically because of you." "Me, why? Because you were the kind of father they never had. The kind who would do anything to protect his family once he realized they were in danger. Rebecca believed that if she removed Elizabeth, you would eventually transfer that devotion to her." William looked through the window to where his children slept peacefully. "She never understood what real love is." "No," Michael agreed, "she didn't." After ending the call, William remained on the porch swing, contemplating all that had happened. Elizabeth's silver pocket watch, retrieved from Rebecca's possessions, now sat on his bedside table, a reminder of what had been lost and what had been saved. William carried Sophie back to bed, tucking the covers around her. In the adjacent room, Ethan slept peacefully, his small chest rising and falling with each breath. William stood in the doorway between his children's rooms, watching over them. "I'll always protect you," he whispered. "Always."